Welcome back to Bleav in Softball. I'm your host, Jenna, and however you got here today, whether you downloaded the audio version on Apple, Spotify, etc., or you're watching video on YouTube, thank you and welcome. Subscribe and rate the show wherever you get your pods. You can follow us on Instagram and X at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. And of course, the merch. Click the link in our bio on either page or go to shop.bleav.com to purchase. There are 3 different shirts for covering our bases, safer out, and catch you soon. All right, let's go through today's batting order. First, we will be covering our bases. I'm going to share some call-outs. Then we'll head into today's interview with Jenny Topping. She has been a legend at every level she's competed at the Olympics, in the pros, both here in the US and in Japan, and of course, college. So for those newer to the game, if you don't already know about her, you're in for a treat. Then we'll bring it home and I'll wrap up with some final thoughts. All right, let's go. Covering our bases. So this past week, I was at the Virginia series at Stanford, and it was an exciting one. It was a ranked matchup, of course. It was a key series for the ACC standings. And as I've mentioned before, these are 2 programs who recruited me. I did go on that official visit to Virginia and obviously played for Stanford. So getting to say hello, though, and chat with head coach Joanna Hardin, that was the most recent addition to the Believer family. So it was really exciting to see her, and I can't wait to see them at the ACC tournament. And then, of course, the series itself just didn't disappoint. There was a walk-off win, there was a rubber match, and there were some new program records that were set. What more can you really ask for? And on the Stanford side, it was senior day, and I have been covering this class for their entire careers. And I think this group is just a perfect example of putting the team first over the individual, all of them. And they're one of the most successful classes in Stanford softball history. Back-to-back Women's College World Series, 3 straight supers, and they're on track for 4 NCAA tournament appearances as well. Not necessarily a huge long list of individual accolades for each of them, but as a group, they've really done a great job. And their families as well. You know, that becomes sort of the extended family of any program. And so, for example, 5th-year grad student Kaylin Koch, her twin sister Kennedy, actually came and sang the national anthem for senior day. She did it for the big swing, too, and they set the attendance record. And, you know, it's just a cool thing when you see those extended relationships. And I'm ready to welcome these seniors into the alumni families soon, but not yet because they still have some business to take care of this season. We also said so long to softball in Stanford Stadium. So I actually called the midweek game against Santa Clara. It was my last broadcast of the regular season, but it was also the last home game in this magical year in the football stadium for Stanford. And I got a lot of questions about this, so I'll address it. No, they cannot host postseason because they have to tear down the field and set up for pre-planned Coldplay concerts and for graduation. Turns out they need more time to be able to set up for that. And those things were planned well in advance. It is a bummer, though, especially after the big swing making history. But I think to still be able to look back and be impressed that this university, the athletic department, and the football program all invested and supported softball in this way is a win. And my broadcast partner, Jordan Watkins, who I've worked with a lot over the years, you may have heard us call some games together. He played in the stadium for Stanford football, and he works for them now. And I obviously played for the program, of course, so we got to call that last game together, which was also pretty cool. Another thing that was cool was, once again, our D1 softball podcast this week. A new episode with my co-host, Amanda Lorenz. It's out. We interviewed Ella Parker from OU after they swept their arch rival, Texas, on senior weekend, and they're heading into a crazy ending in Gainesville in SEC play this weekend. You can see it on D1's social channels and also hear about it in the episode. So just check out the episode. You know, you can find it on D1 Softball's YouTube or download it on whatever audio platform you get your pods. So it's time well spent every single week. A highlight for me, for sure. And then coming up, I am hitting the road. I'm on a 1.5-week trip. It's going to start with the ranked ACC series with Florida State at Virginia Tech. It's my first time ever going to Blacksburg, so give me food recs and even just spots on campus. Local recommendations are welcome. And then from there, I'm actually heading to Boston for the ACC tournament. It's my first time that I'm ever going there too. My grandma's from there, but I've never been. And so, of course, also my first ACC tournament. So more recommendations are also welcome for that, because conference seasons across the country are coming to a close and we are about to enter mayhem. It's crazy. But someone who is experiencing that with their program is today's guest. So let's head into the interview. She's an Olympic gold medalist, MPF champion, 4-time All-American, 3-time Big West champion, and Player of the Year, Cal State Fullerton and Olympic Hall of Famer, and player development assistant for the Titans, and owner of Gold Medal Training Softball, Jenny Topping. Was that intro long enough for you, Jenny?
Perfect. It's perfect.
Does it hit you, though, that that's just actually scratching the surface of all the things that you've done and still do?
I'm so many things in regards to, so much more than the medal and all of those things. So, and my playing time. So whatever the intro is, I'm happy with it. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and I'm excited to even get to know that a little bit more beyond just, what we see on paper or what we saw on the field.
Definitely.
I will tell you, though, up front that I still to this day do own the Sports Illustrated magazine with the real Dream Team on the cover. It was one of the coolest things ever, right? Like that I thought of at the time. And I was probably playing like 14 and under at the time. And so obviously a very influential time, formative time in my life, and helped, I would think so, propel me to want to do what I wanted to do and go play collegiate softball. So thank you for that is really what I have to say first.
I love that. I love to tell the story of that Sports Illustrated cover actually allowed me to rent my first apartment. So Kelly Crutchman and I were looking for a place in Belmont Shore, Long Beach, and neither of us had rented a place on our own. And so we're driving around and we just happened to see this nice place. It was like a fourplex, and we walked in and it just happened to be that the owner was standing there. And, it was right after the Olympics, yada, yada, yada. We start chatting and, we're like, hey, we'd like to rent the place, right? It's like a block from the ocean. And he's like, well, do you have anything to prove? And this guy's a huge, huge sports buff. And I was like, actually, I think I have the cover. I think I have something in the car. And then I went into the car and I brought it out and we signed the lease on the spot. So I was really, really grateful to have it, and that was a cool moment for sure.
That's awesome. I have not heard that story before. Obviously, that's part of the reason I wanted to chat with you. I'm like, tell me all the stories from all of your experiences. That is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Do you and Kelly, have you guys since then ever kind of looked back on that moment and been like, wow, that was not something that a lot of people experience?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we're living on other sides of the country right now. She's in Florida, I'm in California. So our opportunities to cross paths don't happen very often. But, any chance we can, of course, we reminisce on, those fun times we had where we were just training for the next Olympics and just enjoying living by the beach and celebrating life. So, yeah.
I have seen in deep in the archives, actually, like on some of your bio pages for USA Softball and Team USA, that's some of the stuff that you've talked about when it was sort of like the get to know Jenny Topping section of your page. It was a lot about, walking around exploring Japan with teammates, or waking up at 5 a.m. to drink coffee in another country with them, or just kind of enjoying the moment and those little things. And I appreciate that. But even you saying, it was a block away from the beach, those types of things. Why are those things important to you?
That really leads into, I've been asked a few times, more than a handful of times when I've run into some old teammates, is like, where you been? You feel like you haven't been in the softball world. You feel like you've disappeared. And those moments really played a big part in me coming back to the sport. I just needed some time to sort of step away, and I didn't truly step away. I was still doing private and group lessons, but really I stepped away from the college game to reflect on, the systems that I was playing under, what worked for me and what didn't. And, I've come back full steam ahead to really bring the things that helped me be my best version of myself, and also, sort of be able to create a new system or an additional helpful addition to our sport that's really, I believe, is necessary, and which is really about empowering the full athlete and authenticity and autonomy. And, I looked back and there were times where um, I wasn't so balanced. And the balance was missing because I had encountered some fear based coaches. And so those were some of the areas that would take me out of the moment, right? Pull me from the moment where I was experiencing bliss and joy and the greatest version of myself. And so, you know, part of me coming back to the game is to really be able to help create a space for athletes to bring their fullness of who they are and, you know, change from the old paradigm. It is time for the old paradigm to shift, or for athletes to have another option. And that old paradigm is that, is the belief that fear is a motivator, and it's not, it's a limitator. So it limits us, it doesn't motivate us. And so in a very quick nutshell, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm back volunteering my time at Fullerton.
Well, what I love about that is the fact that you're adding from your success. So clearly there was some level of success on paper, at least in terms of outcome and result with what you've
Yes.
experienced. But just like anyone who is just elite at what they do, you're always trying to make it better. And in this case, it's the game itself, for the larger community too.
Sure. And I think that there were times in my experience where I had to sort of separate myself. Couldn't bring the fullness of who I was to the field. And so I believe that when that happens, we're not stepping in our full power. And so giving athletes the opportunity to bring all of who they are to the field means that they don't have to, hide a part of themselves or separate themselves. And they get to be a whole human and a whole athlete on the field. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I read somewhere that you said, I used to take my piercings out and wear long hair and try to force certain things. And you're like, no, I'm just going to be me, which I also appreciate. Whatever that me is, right, for anybody.
Yeah, I would say that in those moments where I could tap into the zone, and led to my ultimate success, I was creating. I was in the energy of creation, not in the energy of fear. And the energy of creation was flowing through the full authenticity of myself, and I didn't realize that those were the moments that I was able to bring all parts of me. And then when that moment ended, when I left the field, I would again separate myself, right, and hide the parts of me that I didn't feel were worthy of sharing with the world, and not realizing that in those key moments, in all the greatest moments of my life that I've ever had on and off the field, it's because of the fullness of who I am, the gifts that I bring to the table outside of just my physical capabilities on the field, that truly, is a gift to the
Yeah.
moment, right?
Yeah. And the game has changed a lot since you were playing, obviously, in itself, let alone your perspective and what you've learned over this time. But you have the unique experience of, hey, you're an alum from Fullerton and you're back there, part of the staff now. So when you look at sort of that evolution specifically at Cal State Fullerton and from what you've observed, how do you reflect on that?
I think that, like anything else, technology is great. It's given me an opportunity again. Coming back and doing this has really given me the opportunity to step back and observe what has really come into the game since I've been out of the game. Just with the abilities of scouting, with synergy, and all of the data, all of the information, the player cards, the defensive cards, the offensive cards. There's a lot, right? And within that, I think that one of the things, again, that I spend time talking about is there is a balance. Just as important as the physical aspects of the game, there is the ability to quiet your mind, ground and center your energy, and step into that limitless space. And so with all of the reps and all of the information, we also have to spend time really fostering that relationship with ourselves. And again, learning to trust ourselves and getting into the zone, that space where we become limitless. And yeah, so that part hasn't changed. I just think the information and knowing what to do with the information becomes very important, because you can get paralysis by analysis for sure.
I definitely experienced that myself as an overthinker just naturally. So sometimes I think that's a really good point you make is it's not just getting the information, but it's how you utilize it, how you even understand it before you do anything about it. It's more than just gathering information, right?
Mhm.
It's the application of it too.
One of the things that the older times allowed for is, because there wasn't as information accessible, the delineator was, were you able to really recognize that those moments were opportunities of creation?
Mm,
And if we can allow ourselves and we create an environment where we have the opportunity to see those moments of creative moments, because we create a safe, autonomous, authentic environment for the athletes, then they can, really tap into those spaces more. And
yeah,
that's where, that's where the greatest gifts take us past the game, right?
yeah. It's so interesting because it's this sense of, or this balance from my view, I'd love to hear yours, of there are certain things that feel foundational that you're like, yes, I would like to stay true to that. But then there's this space that you want to have for that growth, for that evolution, for just being able to be open to other things.
Hmm.
But it's like you do want to have that sense of self at the same time. So someone referred to it recently to me as identity management. And I thought that was an interesting way to put it, because you're trying to figure out your identity, but you also don't want to put yourself in a box, really, either.
Yeah, I can hear that. I think, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that spaces of, labels and context help us identify who we are. Whether we're on the spectrum of ADHD, or we're, spectrum autism, or, we're queer, somewhere on the queer spectrum. I think that when we have the opportunity to use labels, it allows us to further know ourselves. And I think there's power in knowing who you are and recognizing that the unique parts of who you are a gift to the world. Rather, others may want to say that they're a detriment, but ultimately, in the creation of each one of us, those aspects of us are really the gifts that make us unique and different than others, which is our power, right? It's our superpower
Right.
when we embrace them.
Yeah. And it doesn't always just have to be one label, like you're saying. We can be multiple things.
Of course.
Yeah. And just certain things where, and this is a little bit specific to being on the field, but even the fact that you were a lefty catcher in a time where that is not something that every coach or every team bought into, kind of for arbitrary reasons, in my opinion. But
Hmm.
I thought that was a really cool aspect of your game too, is that you're this lefty catcher. You don't care. You're behind the plate. You're going to do whatever you need to do, you know? And from that aspect, did that ever feel or affect like certain conversations you had with coaches or just your development as a player?
There might have been conversations that were had to my parents at one point. I don't ever remember a time where a coach said I couldn't be a left-handed catcher. I know that that's pretty common today. I get a lot of those questions if someone reaches out to me, or brings their daughter to a game and wants to meet me. You know, as soon as we put a limit that something can't be done, someone's going to break it, right? I mean, we see this
Yep.
all the time. Lisa Fernandez is 5'6". I mean, we just see all of these examples of, it's our beliefs that prevent us from believing that we're capable of doing something. There is no default body that allows us to do something in a perfect way, other than another default. All bodies are accessible to those spaces. It's just, whether you're meant to do that and you believe you can. So, yeah, it was fun to be one that, be able to do something that others hadn't done. But I think that people forget that we did have a previous left-handed Olympic catcher as well. So, I just, softball was probably a little bit further along when I got there. So there were definitely other left-handed catchers that paved the way for me. So,
Yeah. And you paved the way for even more, which is the cool thing.
definitely.
And with some of your teammates, you just mentioned Lisa as an example. I feel like you all represented very important things for us, especially during the time that, you were all part of the Real Dream Team, to look up to and to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, we could take whatever we saw from you all and apply that to ourselves and be like, oh, I'm going to be myself, right? What do you feel like you learned from your teammates from that Olympic experience?
I think that there were similar mindsets, although there were, varying degrees along the spectrum. I believe that, all of us had the same mindset of wanting to, achieve something, being driven to achieve something. Now, the work ethic, people spend a lot of time talking about, it takes the work ethic to get there, and for sure work gets you there to some degree. But if work were the only component, then everybody, specifically even in college softball, everybody would play the same, because in college softball the hours are limited, right? So everybody's getting the same amount of hours. So if work is the only thing that is the only thing that gets someone to the next level, then we'd all be the same. There's other factors that are happening. There are other, aspects that I think, again, at times we don't spend enough time talking about, and that's, the space of really being able to tap into the zone, the space where you make the ball look like a watermelon, the space where it becomes easy and effortless, the space where you forget that there are people around you. You couldn't hear anybody in the stands. I mean, these things have been described for as long as sports have been around, right? And when we spend more time talking about that space and how to free ourselves to get into that space and practicing on that creative space more often, I think that we see that that was the space that probably we had the most in common amongst the team, is that we all had the ability to access that space, maybe more than other athletes were. And even when moments of fear, you can take two athletes and they can describe, I call it the magical moment, right? It's the moment where you can feel the atmosphere shift. You can feel energy in the air. One athlete might describe that as, I'm nervous. I don't want to be in this moment, anybody but me. And you have other athletes that in that moment say, I can't wait to see what I can create in this moment. And I think that you'd probably find that, my teammates on that team were looking more forward to those moments than were dreading it. And that's something that you can spend time fostering and really fostering for athletes so that they can really enjoy those moments more.
As you're kind of talking through this, I'm just thinking about the fact that you are so focused on player development now too in your role on staff with Fullerton, and that role in itself wasn't a part of really collegiate softball until more recent years. But to get a glimpse into what that really means and what the mindset is and your approach going into it, I think is fascinating, especially for college softball fans, because there are so many of those elements that go into this too. It's not just, swinging at a ball on a tee.
And again, I would say it first start with me as reflecting on my own career and seek spaces that I didn't feel empowered, spaces that I didn't feel I had autonomy, the spaces where fear was a motivator, that really forced me to make choices for myself and how I wanted to perform as an athlete and what I wanted to motivate myself with. And then as a coach, stepping back into the game, do I want to take power from athletes or do I want to point them towards their own power? And as a coach, when you recognize, for myself, I've done everything that I wanted to do on the field. And I'm grateful for the career and the opportunities that I had. I don't want to take that from another athlete. I want to point them towards their power so that they get to decide how great they want to be, and creating environments where athletes know that and they have the freedom to um, choose to be the best version of themselves is really what drives me today is in player development. And it's a journey, right? Because most athletes have experienced a spectrum of coaches, and so they have to be open to, you know, creating with me in those spaces, for sure.
I think it's interesting because not everybody, until they've done this work on the mental side, necessarily understands that there is a choice. So, to those who might not understand that, how would you explain, like, no, this is something that you can actually choose?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first thing I say is, if you have the opportunity before, during, or after you have, a moment, a magical moment, whether you were successful or not, the outcome really doesn't have anything to do with it. But if you can observe the thoughts that were going on, then you have the opportunity to really be able to identify what that core belief was and where it came from. And then you get to start to look at where it came from. And, these are the spaces that we want to look at as athletes, and we want to be able to identify and ultimately we want to work through these processes to where we're looking forward to the magical moments. And yeah, then we're really creating. And that this doesn't only affect, obviously, this doesn't only affect our softball life. If we can teach athletes how to create on the field, then you can teach them how to be creators in their day-to-day life. And this is the ultimate, when we believe fear is a motivator, they carry that throughout their lives. And it can be very detrimental, as I know from my own parts of my own life, for sure.
Right. I like the concept of creation. I like the way that that's how you've conceptualized this thought process. Because I don't know if I've always thought of it that way, as like creating certain moments, creating certain energy. But it is creation. That is very true. And so I like that that's how you've sort of brought this together and packaged it up.
Thanks. I mean, if you think about a sunrise or a sunset, right? These are the things that my Olympic teammates would say they remember the most about me. Is we'd be waking up at 5 a.m. in Brazil and the sun's come up, and I'm saying, wait, let's all take a moment and just take this moment in. We're seeing the sunrise in Brazil, and when you can take a broader perspective and pause for a moment and observe where you're at, then you have the opportunity to make a different choice in that moment. And sometimes it's, well, I've done it that way my whole life. Maybe in this one time, I'm going to try something different. And just in that moment, you have the opportunity to see something from a different perspective. If you really think about it, you and I are even looking at this moment from two different perspectives. You have a lens and I have a lens. I have a version and you have a version. And realistically, if we can see the other person's perspective, or we give ourselves the opportunity to see a moment in a different perspective that we've always seen it in one way, now there's growth, now there's change. Now we have the opportunity to shift our mindset. And this is where we become creators, because now we break cycles that we've perpetuated over and over and over again. And it's just by saying, okay, wait, I've seen this moment 100 times. I've looked at this sunrise 100 times. And each time I was just like, oh, I'm so tired. I don't even want to be up. And this one morning, I decided to see it from a different perspective, right? And it's
Yeah.
life changing.
Yeah. In some ways, at times it's we get to, not we have to
Yeah,
do certain things. Yeah.
life is a choice.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to ask you on a slightly different note, but about one of your choices recently, because I saw that you threw out a first pitch at Fullerton, which is awesome. But you chose to go overhand, and I wanted to
Mhm.
know what the thought process was. Did you consider underhand? What went into the decision making, or was it really you didn't even think much about it?
I guess, I guess someone would say you play softball, you should throw it underhand, right? But I've made that throw
Yeah.
so many times in my life, it was just at the other end.
Yep.
So I had the opportunity to stand in the circle. Again, I've played so many games in that on that field. I have I have stood in that circle so many times, more times than I could even count, right? But how many times have I thrown from that perspective? So, I just chose what I knew, and then
Yeah.
I just chose to embrace the moment and throw it overhand versus having any thoughts of what was going to happen with it if I threw it underhand. So, yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It was
Mhm.
a debate. Some of the Stanford alum recently, a few weeks back, Ramona Shelburne was throwing out the first pitch. They asked her kind of last minute. So she was like, guys, what should I do? And trying to think through it. She ended up going with something that was authentic to her, actually, like a trick pitch that she used to
Okay.
do when she was a kid, like just
Hmm.
that's what felt good to her. So then obviously that sparked me wanting to ask you.
Yeah, it's unique. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Very, very
Very
cool.
cool.
But with
Definitely.
your time at Fullerton, I appreciate that we're talking a lot more about process and creation, like you said. But your outcomes were very impressive as well at Fullerton too. The fact that you have program records for your whole slash line is pretty cool. For batting average, for on base percentage, and for slugging. I think that's awesome because it just shows a multidimensional player, which is no surprise given the success that you had there as well as beyond later on in your career. But is that something that comes up because you're on staff? You're with that Titan family all the time. I'm sure you're not necessarily thinking about it, but does it come up with everybody that you work with now?
Well, there's two things I have for that. One is we have an athlete. Her name's Ava Arce. She is close to breaking one of my records, I believe, and so uh, I had a few. Someone asked me about it the other day. I didn't know that she's close to breaking it, and so I went over to her and I just sort of teared up and I had a moment and I said I had no idea. I'm so excited. What a powerful moment that I'm actually here and I get to witness someone do it. And I'm so proud of you. And records are meant to be broken, and I can't wait to be here to see you do that. So I think that is phenomenal and exciting, and like I said, I'm just excited that I get to be the one to see her do it. So, yeah. And then the second one was very sweet. I was at Kelly Ford's retirement party, and there were a handful of athletes that came up to me after the event, and they said, "You're Jenny?" I said, "Yes." They're like, "Oh my gosh, we have a play and it's called The Jenny." And I said, "Okay." I'm like, kind of like, "Okay, hold, what's this?" So basically, anytime that they have a hitter come up that they potentially may want to walk them, it's called The Jenny. So she's a Jenny. So a potential Jenny. And so I thought that that was just very sweet and kind that they were, using an alumni to sort of perpetuate the story down the line. And so it's really cool. So till this day, I actually, ironically, I do some of the charting of the hitters for the other teams, and I write down possible Jenny. So
How
That's
cool
fun.
is that though, that that impact has lasted? That speaks to your impact as well as the culture of the program to, like you said, continue that.
Yeah,
That's
I
very
mean,
cool.
I think when you're playing, you don't, you're not, there's again these moments of broader perspective, but really you're not thinking about any of these things. And really what I'm grateful about is my career has given me the opportunity to now be able to come back and bring this, what I Bleav is a helpful addition to the sport, to really be able to bring something that could empower the athletes, um, and take them to the next level when it comes to tapping into that powerful creative space. So it's because of my career and some of the years of reflection that I took some time to really spend to be able to come back and kind of bring this to the game, which I'm a new paradigm shift, which I'm super excited to be a part of.
Yeah. We have had Kelly Ford on this show as
Okay.
well. Actually, right after her final season as the
Oh,
head
okay.
coach. So would have been not too far, not too distant from that retirement party that you're talking about. And she was an assistant on the team when you were playing. Is that right?
She was. She was. I think I spent one season with her, spring. I came in mid-season after fall. And yeah, I got one season with her. Lots of energy. That's
Yeah.
what I remember. So yeah.
I remembered that even just, well, from watching her because I had seen her, they had come to the Stanford Regional. And so I got to see her up close and personal coaching. But then also in some of the press conferences and the way she would speak, I felt like that Fullerton culture and energy, obviously, from
Mhm.
her just radiated. So I was like, I need to have her on the show. So that's how that happened. But I've also had some others like Hannah Becerra, no relation to me, but other than, friends, but
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
but just everyone I've ever talked to, I've appreciated this energy from the program it's like this hard work ethic, like you've said, but I don't know, it's hard to explain
Mhm.
actually,
Mhm.
because I feel like it is very special and unique, and it's this work ethic combined with just appreciation as well. Is that how it feels for you? This is an outsider perspective, of course.
Yeah, no, Fullerton kind of gave me a safe space when I transferred, and it gave me a safe space also near where I grew up. So it already kind of felt like home. So yeah, it definitely. And then you know how timing beautifully works out that Gina got hired as the head coach. I've had a blast this season. I've really enjoyed being able to volunteer, and I'm excited to see what comes next in the college journey for me. So, yeah, now that I've really gotten my feet wet and been able to kind of sit back and observe a lot and see, okay, the game's changed quite a bit, but then in a lot of ways it really hasn't. So,
Totally.
yeah, it's been fun.
Totally. Even the Judy Garman tournament, I remember competing in that. I think we were chatting around that time trying to figure out when we could talk here in this forum. But there are certain things like that that feel like the history is really rich, to your point, too. But then
Yeah,
there's also been a lot of evolution. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. And one thing I asked Kelly about, too, or I brought up with her that it feels important to me, at least, that Fullerton is one of only two programs who are quote unquote mid major or outside the power conferences that has won a national championship. And I think that's an important aspect in terms of, you don't have to only take certain path to accomplish what you'd like to accomplish or become who you want to become, more importantly.
Well, I think my story is along that lines too. I left
Yep.
the Pac-10, came to
Yep.
Cal State Fullerton, and still continued my journey to become an Olympian. So, as soon as someone says you can't do something, there's opportunity, right? Just once we get into alignment and step into the flow and step into our power, anything's, accessible. So,
Yeah. And I know even some of your teammates too on USA, like Laura Berg, who's also been on the show, and Crystal Bustos, like they didn't do the Pac-10's path that others were doing at the time. And look what you all have done for the game and continue to do throughout your journeys, even, years later from maybe that dream team. There's still plenty of impact that you all are making.
yeah, it is fun to see where we all have gone in past our journeys, and what approaches we now, whether we're in the game or how we're in the game. And yeah, it's always fun to check in and see. Most of us, half of us are head coaches now, so that's fun to see too. So it always, you see it sort of turn over. So it is time. So it happens that fast.
It's true. Well, I remember even competing against in college since I'm at the time it was still the Pac-12 and it's at Stanford, and so Lisa Fernandez is on staff at UCLA, one of your teammates, and then yes, Laura Berg makes her way to Oregon State, and she's been leading it for a while now. But I remember being like, wow, that's a cool moment from my perspective, just knowing what you all have done for the game and continue to do. But then I'm like, that's the cover of Sports Illustrated that I had. And now in a different way, we're sort of part of the same world, if you will, in college softball in different ways. And it was, I don't know, those moments too. You try not to get caught up in it, right? Because you're just trying to compete. But when you think about it later, you're like, wow, that was actually really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways, all of us are still chasing those magic moments. Whether you're doing it as an athlete or or as a coach. And I think that's the fun perspective, at least for myself, is I don't have to chase it. I know that I can now, I know how to access it in my life, and I can, show the athletes how to do that. So yeah, bringing life to athletes.
Yes. And new things, while new things are on the horizon, like you're saying, paradigm shift, lots of new things. Like, for example, the Big West Conference Tournament, first one ever, one of the last conferences to implement it, which so was the Pac. I never did that. They only had it for a couple of years, right, before things changed. But thoughts on that, being a part of a first, for the conference?
Yeah, I mean, you tell me. The end of it, the team that wins, they ultimately get to move on, correct?
They get the automatic bid, yes, to the
Okay.
NCAA tournament.
So if you came on top, and again, I haven't spent a lot of time even talking about this. If you at the end of the games go in one seed, you are, obviously they can look at you perhaps for going post, but it's only the team that, yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective. I think that we spend a lot of time on with this team, and I do with the Fullerton team, is, you can, on paper, a team looks a certain way, but it's not until you get on the field that you can sense their energy, and energy is powerful. And some teams we've played that, maybe on paper didn't look as strong as other teams in our conference, but they came out with so much energy, and there's power in all of that. And I think going into the final tournament, you kind of have a better, at least for myself, I have a perspective of what teams energetically are going to bring it. It doesn't matter if they're, ranked sixth, they have energy and they're going to bring it. Versus, other teams that may have done as well, but they just don't have that collective energy behind them. So I think it'll be fascinating to see. You get to now see all of them after you've gone through and played them all. So again, from that perspective, you're getting a broader perspective of what it looked like and where the team was at during those times as well. So I'm a fan of it. I think that I'm excited to see, again, I don't have any nerves with this because I've played. I'm just excited to see what the athletes create on the field. And that's the best part. I can sit back and relax, know they get to know they're prepared, and they can, take a deep breath and find that balance within them, and see what they're made of. That's ultimately what that moment is. So yeah, I'm excited to be part of the, first ever. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's cool. I mean, it's that postseason feel, and like you said, you could be the regular season champion, but how are you going to perform in the moment on the day, or the days of the tournament? And yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited to see just what happens with the conference too, because
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's interesting that that we're playing it on our field. Um, I'd say that's a bit of an advantage. It's our
yeah,
energy. It's our field. So I might have a problem with that if it wasn't us. Only because our energy's there all the time.
right, right.
So
And I mean, the fact that you all are able to have in that environment too, like I mentioned, Judy Garman, you have two fields. How many college programs can say they have two fields on campus? Again, the rich history, the work you put in every single day together as a group,
mhm.
all of those things come into home field advantage is real. But I
It
feel like with
is.
Fullerton, it's a little extra too, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. If we're the only program in the conference that's ever won a college World Series, so that energy is infused into the
Yeah,
program. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
yeah. No, I'm excited to watch. I'm very excited to watch. And I know that you said, we talked about it a little bit, that you believe in enjoying the moment. And so those are some new moments that you all can enjoy in different ways.
Definitely.
Well, with where you're at now, looking back, of course, on your journey to this point, but like you said, you're excited because you're a part of this new part of that journey for you. Where do you hope that softball goes from here? Like, what do you like? Okay, these things seem great. I would love to see this moving forward for our game.
Yeah, I believe that ultimately fear and shame bring death to athletes, and that's something that um, they carry on from a sport that is supposed to be fun and motivating and inspiring, and bring them truth and light. Fear and shame are really energies that don't need to be part of the game anymore. So if I can play a part in you know just bringing in addition, another choice for athletes, giving them another option, another choice, another way that they can experience those moments, then they can carry that on into their future lives. So, I mean, power is available to all. It's just learning how to access that power. And for a long time, we've seen a smaller number of athletes be able to access that power. Now you start to give all athletes access to that power, and you know, they get to carry that on to ultimately into their lives. So that's to me what yeah, I want to see shifted and changed and given choice to.
Yeah, well, that's powerful in itself.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I've very much enjoyed speaking with you. I knew we would, but it's great that we've been able to finally connect. I do wrap up with every guest
Okay.
playing a little game.
Okay.
It's called Safer Out.
Hmm.
So basically, I will just bring up a topic, softball related. If you like it or you agree with it, you call it safe. If not, then you call it out.
Okay.
Hopefully, straightforward.
All right. All right.
So the first one is uniform shorts, like you all used to rock back in the day. Safe or out?
I say safe. I think it should be a choice for sure.
Yeah. I couldn't remember the last time. It's been a while. Been like 10 years or so maybe since seeing college softball adopt that.
I'm sure they'll make their way back around, like everything else, like mom
Good
jeans
point.
and, all fashion. It will have its time again.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Okay, that was the first one. Second one is Olympic softball being held in Oklahoma City for LA 2028. Safe or out?
Out. I say you put money into Cal State Fullerton
Mm,
and you host it there,
that's a great idea.
right?
Yeah, that is a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's
I
just yeah. I think it's a challenge to be in Oklahoma with everything else. You could miss the really the spirit of Olympics and the just all of it being in the village and things of that sort. So money is put into playing the sport in most other countries that we go to. So why don't we just develop one of our fields that we have here in Southern California so those athletes get the full experience?
Yeah, that was sort of
Mhm.
from, again, from someone who has not experienced that. My
Mhm.
thought process was like, well, the Olympic Village and that whole experience, especially not being able to get it in Tokyo either,
Right. Right.
because of all the restrictions, that is special. And someone like you who obviously knows what that's like to
Right.
experience, I'm curious, like what your thoughts would be. Because of course, OKC, that's a gorgeous venue.
Mhm.
That's a total separate thing. Um, but yeah, that's interesting.
And LA is just, it's an incredible city. And, there are plenty of athletes that are going to play on that team that have, not spent a lot of time in LA. So,
True.
as I've said, we have the USOC, we have plenty of money to be able to go in and retrofit something that we have in California, in
Yeah.
Southern California, and make it work. So, yeah, I think, I'm sure the athletes will make the best of it and they'll fly back and forth for whatever experiences they're meant to have. And like you said, Oklahoma is perfectly set up for it. But, I'd love to see them spend a little more time, maybe giving it an option for something more local for sure.
Yeah.
So,
I saw baseball is being hosted in Dodger Stadium, so my thought was, well, can the Angels host softball? But I like Fullerton even better, I think.
yeah. I mean, I think, of course, they can do anything they want, right?
Right.
They can take the grass off the infield. It's
Hmm.
just some modifications. If anybody's like myself played in Japan, they're constantly using baseball fields
Oh, yeah.
and using those stadiums, or essentially they're using larger fields and making them mobile for whatever you're playing. So yeah,
Yeah.
could be done at Angel Stadium as well.
Yeah. We got
Hmm.
options. We know that. So
Yeah,
we'll
we
see.
do.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. That was the second one. Next
Mhm.
one is transfer portal, safe or out?
Safe.
Well, I wanted to ask you specifically because you
Mhm.
did make that move, but well
Yeah.
before the portal is what it is today, right? So I was very
Mhm.
curious your thoughts.
I think that athletes should have choice. I think that empowering athletes to decide whether, for multiple reasons, but whether a space is healthy for them mentally, whether the program is a fit. And of course, obviously the goal is to have that figured out, before you go. But I think that just as coaches have options, I think the athletes should have options as well, to make decisions that work for them. And I think sometimes energetically you go to a program and it's a fit the first year, and then maybe it's not after that. And to have the option to be able to continue somewhere else is powerful and important. So yes,
Yeah,
portal is powerful.
makes sense.
Hmm.
The last one is bat flips, safe or out?
Mm. You're saying like in a game after a hit or
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Safe. Safe. I mean, I think that creativity is a part of everything that we do. I think that athletes should be able to, um, you know, we get collective energy mistaken with everybody needing to be the same, right?
Mm,
Um, and if if we all have the same approach in the sense of when it comes game time, we're all in energetically, we're all in on the mission of what we're wanting to achieve into this game, you have collective energy. But giving athletes, empowering them to be able to be authentic within that, you're talking about an even more powerful athlete because they felt like they're seen, they're known for who they are, and now I can bring all of me because I get to be quirky. I'm quirky. I'm a little more loud. I'm a little more shy. I like to have piercings. I have tattoos. I like to dye my hair. When you get to bring all parts of yourself to the game, you make the collective energy better. You're the puzzle piece that is needed for this team when you're being authentic, and when you're not, the puzzle piece doesn't fit. So, anytime we're trying to force athletes to be the same, we're minimizing their power, right? We're confining them, we're limiting them. So, yeah.
It's a great point. And now you're making me think, yes, even pieces to a puzzle, they're not all the same. That's what's the point of a puzzle, right? If that's the case. So that makes a lot of sense. Collective. Yeah, I like that. Well, thank you so much again for joining. This was awesome. I'm so glad that we got to connect, and I can't wait to see what you do from here on out too. Obviously, have followed you before earlier on in your career, but excited about what you're doing for the game now and moving forward too.
Thank you for having me on. This has been amazing. So thank you so much.
I'm so glad to have had Jenny on the show. She brings such an interesting perspective as somebody who played when she did, but then is now still part of the game as it's evolving today. And she makes you think about things a little bit differently too, which is cool. And for those who have been following, we have now had 11 of the 15 members of the Real Dream Team roster from Athens 2004 on this show. It means a lot. It's not just a checklist per se, because each one of them is unique and bring more to the table than just that. But it was such an influential time for softball and for me personally, and for those that have come after. So, very special. And with that, let's bring it home. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, part of Bleav Network. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, wherever you listen, including Bleav.com and YouTube too. Subscribe to the show, rate the show, and if you liked it, write a review. Follow us on X and Instagram at Bleav in Softball. Again, that's BLEAV. You can reach out to me personally on X at JennaBecerra01 and Instagram at JennaBecerra as well. As always, thank you for tuning in, and catch you soon.